You know what this episode is? This episode is one of those episodes where there are so many darn takeaways that I'd rather just have you listen to the episode, but let me give you a few of them. The most important hire any entrepreneur can make, and I guarantee you it's not the one that you think. And the second most important hire and why, how to empower your team to own outcomes to maximize your company results. And every way to do it. Being perfect in business is a guaranteed path to failure. You need to protect your race car so you can win the race. The secrets of success from the CEO of a very large e-commerce company. Never let other people dictate how you spend your time. And probably one of the best hacks I've ever heard from the CEO of a company on how to connect with your best customers and make more of them. All of that plus more in this amazing episode. So now let's cue the intro. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind is Yours Show on a Free-for-All Friday, and I am excited to have my guest today. I have known this guest for a while, and the secret to my success has been him helping me sleep. Him and his brother have been friends of mine for a long time. They've helped me sleep very, very well. They've educated me about sleep. I've worked with them. We've known each other. We've done lots together. We talk all the time. And I am honored to have him. And I am excited because the guest today has lived in many roles inside of businesses. He's been on the operational side. He's been on the CEO side. He's been in the weeds. And he's been a part of building something from nothing to a multi-seven-figure brand, well, helping people sleep at night. And so I'm going to stop now because I'm just going to keep going and he'll gloat. But let's welcome to the show Tristan. So Tristan, thanks for being here, man.
George, very happy to be here. Thank you so much for the kind words.
I am so stoked, and I always love when I have people with better accents than me because it makes me sound more intelligent. It's like through osmosis and through osmosis. So for those of you listening, it's Tristan. Tristan is half of the duo, the brothers behind Swanwick Sleep, and James is his brother, which we'll have on the show once I can pin him down and he texts me back at some point, but we'll leave that. And James, if you're listening, I just called you out. So Tristan, I start every episode with one question because you've been in this game for a while. I don't even remember when you guys founded the company, but I feel like I've known you for a while, and you've ridden some ebbs and flows inside of the business. And so when you look back at like your journey of entrepreneurship, whether in this business or outside of this business, what would you say was one of the biggest mistakes that you made and the lesson that you took away from it that you mitigate now moving forward?
Probably the first one that comes to mind is when we, with our suppliers, we had a bit of I suppose it was a communication issue. It was a translation issue. And we ended up ordering something like twice the amount of stock that we actually needed to. And yeah, let's just say that there was some pretty awkward conversations with the supplier about, how we were going to make this work. So I'd say that probably one of the biggest mistakes I made was not paying attention to detail when it came to placing very large orders involving big sums of money.
I'd say that's a pretty good one to pay attention to. I have the opposite one because we have such a long lead time in High Speed Daddy for our bags. We have to look at it because we run profit first in the company, like Mike McCallow's profit first, and we have to spread load inventory over 3 rotating lines of credit over a 6-month period before it's landed. And so we're like, we know, like Craig, my business partner, knows to the T, and he can like tell you where shipments are in the water, what port they're at, where they're coming in. But how did that one end up? Did they end up rectifying it? Did you have to buy it? Did they lease it back to you?
Oh yeah, we worked out a deal. It worked out a deal where we could, a payment plan, and then we eventually took the stock off their hands. So it was all good in the end. If anything, it probably helped cement the relationship because we were in it for the long term. It was a really good learning experience, and we're very similar to you. You mentioned High Speed Daddy. We do have long lead times. It can be something, we have something like 3 to 4 month lead times because glasses are and particularly our glasses are very labor intensive. They're very, very handmade to a certain extent. So there's a lot of different processes that they have to go through. So we have those long lead times as well. And I would say that probably leads me on to another, I don't know if I'd say mistake, but a lesson that I've learned is that to get really, really clear on your numbers and your financials as early as possible into the business as you can.
Yeah, and you know what? That's something I think I'm going to unpack with you, because I'd say, looking back at my career, even up until like months ago, the one resounding like thread that was always pulling stress or anxiety or causing issues was a lack of awareness of finances. And
Yeah.
and because here's how my brain operates, because I live in that like marketing brain world. I'm like, we're going to take over the world. We're going to change billions of lives. And they're like, yeah. My wife's like, but what's the number? I'm like, what number? And she's like, yeah, but what? And I'm like, I always used rough estimates in my head. And then I realized that got me into a lot of it. And so for everybody listening, actually, I have another beautiful person with an Australian accent, Phil McGilvery, is our quote unquote cash flow coach. And I absolutely love him to pieces because he puts real numbers to everything. But yeah, I think, especially knowing you like inside of the business, right, with a long lead time like that, 4 months, you have a product that's absolutely amazing, but it's also not like a consumable. People aren't buying one after another, after another, after another. They typically buy a couple pairs, but then you get it. You have to have your numbers dialed. You have to have your numbers dialed.
Exactly. I think all e-commerce businesses have to, but certainly, yes, for ours. And I mean, I would just say for every business, you really want to get your numbers clear as soon as possible. And I know that a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly visionary CEOs, they tend to just ignore the numbers.
Yeah.
Seems a bit crazy, but it's something that they do. And I mean, my advice is just get help as soon as possible. Get a good bookkeeper so you know that the books are crystal clean, and then see if you can find a good virtual CFO to come in and really actually analyze those numbers for you.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, and I would love your perspective on this, because I look back now, and it was funny because as I grew multiple companies, 6 figures, 7 figures, I was always like, okay, how do I hire a bigger team? How do I make more revenue? And then I never asked myself the question of like, how do I measure it and how do I keep it? Right. And I've learned that having a really, really good person, and for me personally, I don't know how you are. James is probably more like me in this one. But I can't be in the numbers every day or it gives me anxiety, right? I want to be in the creation, but I love having the overview, right? Like I love the dashboard view of like, hey, nope, this is it. This is your budget. This is what's here. But if I have to get into it, I like cower up in a corner like a little baby with my thumb in my mouth. And I was like, no, no, no. And so I've learned now, like if I was to ever go back and start High Speed Daddy from the beginning again, we've already run it profit first, but it took us a while to separate it to get an outside perspective. But that perspective has always been helpful for me, where they're like, hey, this is what you're doing right. Like, oh, you might want to check this. You might want to project this. Oh, by the way, your inventories, your numbers look like they're coming up. And that perspective's been really helpful for me. And so I go back and I'm like, one of the first things I would do is either hire a really good CFO, like that can even teach me and give me an hour of their time, or like navigate or guide, or I would hire like a fractional one, like you say, and like a really good bookkeeper and strategist. And so, yeah, I think that's really, really awesome. Do you guys use a fractional CFO, or do you guys have somebody in-house?
We have somebody in-house, as I would say. I mean, he's a contractor and he has other clients, but I consider him to be part of the team, and I would consider him to be in-house, inverted commas, because he's just so available to us. And it's been, I would say, probably it's been one of the most transformative hires that I've made as a CEO, and that is to have someone there who can actually do all of those things that we've just discussed, who will give me fortnightly sort of like reports. He'll give me the monthly reports. I'm like you. I don't really love to see spreadsheets full of numbers, but then he's able to present them in a visual way with dashboards and graphs and things like that. And myself as a visual thinker, that is so much more helpful to me than to see spreadsheets, for example. So, and he's the type of person that, if he sees expenses creep up, he'll get onto Slack and he'll he'll let us know anytime there's a potential new partnership that we need to size up, if we want to look at, what commission we can give an affiliate to, just when it comes to crunching numbers and data and analysis. Or he also does our forecasting as well, which helps us obviously with our ordering of inventory. It's just, it's finding someone who knows what they're doing and you trust is a game changer.
Yeah, I think it's like I have a lot of validation but peace hearing this too, because I think like going back, I could pinpoint most of the challenges that I came across in business as having a lack of awareness of the financial status. Not that I was running out of money, but without knowing the numbers, it's like driving a car blindfolded, because there's so many snowball effects that come down the road that could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks that aren't realized yet, that also the inputs that come in give you a better idea of how to actually run or where to spend your time. And so, it's something like literally 2 weeks ago, we had an accident in our ad account, and we had a good number. So I was spending $500 a day just on YouTube ads, right? For our webinar, like wanting to teach people email. And I love teaching people email. And so we're like, God, these leads are coming in. They're amazing. Like, I've never gotten leads this inexpensive before. And like, I'm stoked. I am stoked. And then we get on the webinar and I got people from Croatia, Angola, Egypt. And I was like, oh no. And I did the webinar and they were all real people. The problem is they would never buy. And I had to go look at it. And I didn't look at the whole picture of like, hey, let's have this extreme budget. Like, this is the top line budget for ad revenue, right? And then we'll measure it against what happens on the webinar. I went to a day and I was like, just go, because they were coming in so cheap. And my brain didn't register like, wait, why are they cheap? We're not seeing this. And we missed a checkbox. And it was a complete accident, but we didn't target down. And we had all these countries. But because I didn't have that tight container of the numbers, it just kept billing and billing and billing and billing and billing. And luckily the webinar was live. So the day the webinar happened, ads stopped. And I learned a very expensive lesson the other day, because you can do the math, but that ran for 15 days at $500 a day and didn't recoup it, right? And it's one of those things, but it comes down to not knowing the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And look, at the end of the day, not everyone can know every single number in the business. It's it's impossible. So that's why it's so important to have a good team and to have people who can help you with that.
Yeah, and another thing, and I would love to know your thoughts on this, because like you and James do this, and like you and I think a lot alike, right? Like we have a lot of similarities that I remember. And when I think about it, I think one of the other big benefits of this, of having somebody externally that I trust, though, is it removes the emotion from the number. And I have found, like, me is like, quote unquote, I might have the label of CEO, but Tyler, when you're listening to this, like Tyler and my team's really like the CEO. Like he just makes me look like a good one, but he handles kind of everything. And what I love about, but even the both of us, like we're both so fully vested in what we do that a lot of the times that emotion or that paradigm comes in, and I've watched it skew numbers just because we are so in it. And I found like having an objective perspective of the numbers, like it even helps me get clear because there's no emotion tied to it. He's like, hey man, no, it's creeping up, turn it down. But if I catch it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm failing. Oh, I can't believe I did that. Why did I do that? I don't know. How is that? Is that like that for anything like you, or am I just crazy on this side?
No, I think it's, of course, there's emotion attached to it. It's, when you see numbers, if you see numbers going in the wrong direction, automatically you want to do something. It's like most entrepreneurs are action takers. They see something, they want to go out there and affect it. But to actually have someone who you trust who can give you some perspective and say, well, hang on a sec, let's just stop and have a look at this and think about it before we rush in to do anything, is really important, especially when you have long lead times and, in a physical goods business. Sometimes you can make little tweaks that you might not even see for a few months. Mm-hmm. So I think that certainly emotion comes into it, and it's always good to have an objective set of eyes to give you a fresh look at things.
Yeah, and I think another thing too is like, because your guy does your projections and everything else, and I would love your thoughts on this, because I feel like a lot of the times too, what's happened is like we've had it, right? Like in the middle of, the craziness in the world right now, High Speed Daddy went from having our best month ever to literally the first 2 weeks of April having our worst month ever, like from founding the company to then the second 2 weeks of April setting our record month in 2 weeks. And it was so crazy. But I remember, like, at the beginning of April, all I wanted to do was like change course. I just wanted to turn the car. And luckily our guy outside is like, wait, hold, do not measure in a day. Do not measure in a day. Let's look at this over. We need more information. And so I feel like I would love your thoughts on that as well, because I feel like when you talk about those small tweaks, I think one of the mistakes that I've made and seen people make is that because I'm an action taker, the moment I see the numbers dip or anything, I'm like, oh, what can I do to fix it? And I end up causing more harm than good because I don't have that patience period. So, like, how do you mitigate that, or what do you do, or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, again, I would just say having really a great team and having people that you trust. You mentioned Tyler. I have my own Tyler in the business. His name is Danny, who I think you've met and you know. And before I make any sort of major decision, I'll always consult him. If it involves finances or numbers, then we'll take it to Shane. And then, I'm really confident that between the three of us, we're not going to make any silly, rash decisions. We may make a calculated decision and it may end up being wrong, but certainly it won't be a decision that we rush into, and that we have, that is not supported by data.
Yeah, no, and I love it too. And when I hear about that, I heard something when you said that, and I didn't even think about this. I have had this rule in my life that when something happens, I need a pause period, right? Like I call it an incubation period, right? So like if something happens and I want to act, I have to put it in my calendar for 48 hours later. And I can't look at it or do anything until then. But I've also realized now with my team, I don't have to do that anymore because I never stay in an echo chamber. Right.
Yeah.
And I love that you said, like, if I have a big idea or something to do, I run it by Danny. And it's that feedback and that pattern of like not being isolated. I think that helps get clarity and come up with like an informed decision. So I absolutely love that. And so how just help me understand a little bit. So how big is your team? Like, so it's you got Danny, but you guys run pretty lean, right?
Yeah, we do. As a core team, we'd have about 4 or 5 people. We've got Sarah, who does saying she runs customer service is completely underselling her. She does customer experience. She's like helps out on the website. She's just a champ. And we've also got Danny has an operational assistant. So we've got Shane, who does our books. So I would say we've probably got about 5 or 6 core full timers, but we do have a lot of contractors and virtual assistants who work varying hours as well. So core team of about 6, and then an extended team of more like 15 to 20 people.
Yeah. Well, what I love about you guys, and obviously like I have insider knowledge knowing you for a while, what I love is that one of the things that I notice from the outside is how you empower your core team, like at the management level, right? Like I'm assuming that a lot of those external team supports are run by the core team, right? They own the outcome
100%.
and then they're allowed to get support to achieve that outcome, right? And so what do you do to like empower that core team? Like you're the CEO, right? So like what are those conversations like? Like how do you set them up to win? What are your units of measure? Like how do you manage that the best way? Because I personally, and the reason I'm asking this is one of the things that I see a lot of is like we hire somebody, or I've seen people hired, but then they're like micromanaged out, or it's task management versus outcome management. And I feel like one of the things I've noticed you guys have done really well is you don't get into the minutia, you give them the outcome, and then they have to own that outcome. So can you talk me through like how you kind of set them up to win or what they do in that?
Yeah. Look, I have to give a lot of credit to a mutual friend and influence of ours, and his name is Alex Sharfin.
Everybody should know who Alex is at this point on the show.
Yeah, I think so. He's I would give a lot of credit to him. I think that instinctually I adopted a lot of his advice, but he certainly helped to, I suppose, systemize and process what I do. And one of the things that he says that I think that I always have to remind myself is don't tell someone what to do, give them an outcome, and then coach them on how to actually achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably the biggest. Probably the biggest thing is don't tell someone what to do. Give them an outcome and let them work out how to achieve that, because you then empower that person to use their initiative, to use their problem solving skills, to really take ownership of the work that they're doing. No one wants to be micromanaged, and the other thing is that being micromanaging people is exhausting.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad.
It's just, and I mean, I suppose the other important thing is that if you have to give them license, or not so much license, but to give them permission to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing that I like to say to people, that, look, I'd much prefer it if you used your initiative, if you make a small mistake, than if you had to come to me, and ask me a question every 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the way you're going to grow as a team member. That's the way you're going to get better at your job. And eventually that helps to take pressure off me and other decision makers.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, look, I would say that that's part of it. Other thing is just having good management processes and systems. And again, that's something that I've really learned from Alex Sharfin. So I give him a lot of credit for that as well.
Yeah, no, I give Alex credit all the time, so I text him every day. We just send audio messages back and forth, helping each other. But I did, and Alex, I'm proud of you because I know you listen to this. Keep going on the ice bath, brother. I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. And I will say though, like Alex and Ryan Moran both look so much better than me wearing your glasses. But I think we're gonna have a model off. I don't know if you saw this on Facebook. We enrolled James into this. We were determining who your best ad asset would be, and it was between me, Alex Sharfin, and Ryan Moran on who looks the best with your glasses on.
Right. Well, I look forward to seeing that. I must admit, I'm spending less time on Facebook these days, just because it's.
That's because you're a very smart CEO.
Yeah, well, you really go down a rabbit hole, and that's one piece of advice that I'd give to people, is to try to keep focus and try to avoid distractions, and don't go chasing shiny objects, because it's so easy to do it, but it can really take you away from what's important.
Yeah, totally. And that's a thread that we can pull right now. One of the things that you said that I think is really funny is that I had to learn forever, like, how to not micromanage. I had to own the outcome, right? But you know what's funny is I love being micromanaged by my team. Like, I start my day with a list in Slack of like, this is what we need you to get done today. When you're done, don't talk to us till tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. And like, it's really funny, like the evolution that I've gone through, because it used to be like, I'm going to own everything. And now I'm like, get it away from me. Hey, well, why don't you please boss me around? Like, just tell me what to do. And it's really an interesting path. And so now for you, and I'm gonna pull the focus thread in a minute, right? But so you are the CEO of, and the URL is swanwicksleep.com. Just, you guys can Google Swanwicks. And if you don't have a pair of their blue light blockers, they're, in my opinion, the best ones that exist. So there's my shining review. I've been wearing them for years. I'm notoriously breaking them, and so I keep them in business by them sending me more and more and more. But yeah, so I go check them out. Go to Swanwick Sleep. I'll check them out. They have a lot of other stuff, but get the glasses. I'm telling you right now, entrepreneurs, and you did not ask me for this. I will say this. Save this audio snippet if you need it. You're an entrepreneur. You stare at your phone, you stare at your computer, you stare at your iPad every single day. And the worst thing that happens with entrepreneurs is that we elevate our cortisol, and then we get into adrenal fatigue. It affects our sleep. It affects our mood. It affects our energy. And then we try to be race car drivers every day. And every moment you're staring at your phone, your computer, your iPad, you are literally elevating your cortisol, because that light is not natural. And so I literally wear their day blockers almost every day that I'm on the computer looking at anything. And it has a drastic positive impact on my body and on my health when I go to sleep. And so I'm saying that from personal experience of somebody who's been through adrenal fatigue and literally stares at a computer 12 hours a day. The difference between wearing them and not is I don't wear them, I get headaches, I don't sleep as well, my stress goes up, my weight's off. When I do wear them, I sleep good, I don't get headaches, I have better energy, I have more mental clarity. And so protect yourself. So, there you go. Said it. Cool.
100%. And I mean, I think you've just described it perfectly, what the benefits are. I'd just like to, something that I'd love to share is that we actually, it's not just, I'm sure people out there trust and honor everything that you say, George, but you don't have to take George's word for it. We now have scientific proof. It was just a couple of months ago that a study that we participated in was published in the Journal of Applied Psychology, and some researchers from the University of Washington and Indiana University, they approached us a couple of years ago asking for glasses to be included in their study. Well, they've just released their results, and it shows that people who wore Swannies blue light blocking glasses in a couple of hours before going to bed at night, they slept better, they slept longer. They also significantly improved their task performance the next day. They significantly improved their engagement at work the next day. They showed more voluntary discretionary work behavior the next day, and they also showed decreased negative work behavior the next day. So the science is out.
Yeah, so it's no longer people. You can't tell me like I'm crazy anymore or it's a placebo. All of you can suck it for all of you making fun of me. But like I will say like and that I would love to see that. Is it on the website? The studies?
Yeah, it should be. There should be
Cool.
a link to it on the website. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see it. And so actually there's two threads that I want to pull now after you sharing that. And, one of them I'm going to ask you in your lens, right? So you're the CEO of this, very successful company, Swanwick Sleep, really like empowering people to sleep better, right? And so like what I would love to hear is like, how do you spend your day? Like, how do you set your day up to win? Like you have a core team of 4 to 5, right? You have an extended support team of 15 to 20. Your entire team is remote. You're in Europe. James is in Australia. Some of the team are all over the place. Like, what does your day look like? And like, when you talk about focus, like how do you set your day up to win, to literally maximize the benefits of what you put into the company?
Yeah, sure. It all comes down to routine and process, really. I can't really speak highly enough about like having a routine and having a schedule. So my day looks like I wake up, make coffee and breakfast for my partner, go for a run with her to work, come back, have a shower, meditate, do some breath work. Then I do my daily planning where I pull out a piece of paper and a pen, and I do some gratitude journaling. I then list out some of the things just off the top of my head what I want to get done that day. Then I try to prioritize those things. And then once I've done that, I get cracking. I try to avoid looking immediately at emails and Slack because you can just go down rabbit holes when you do that. And the thing is, you don't want to let other people dictate what your day is going to look like. You don't want other people to be able to dictate how your time is spent. So I try to actually get some deep work done before I start looking at Slack and email and such. So with the time zones, generally I get to do work for at least most of the morning, and then America starts coming online midday for me. So that's when, if I have some meetings scheduled, then I can do that then. And that's where having everything scheduled and having the calendar is really important. And then in the evening, because of time zones of people in Australia, it just work, and myself in the UK, team members in the US, it just so happens that the only time that we can really all meet at a decent time for everyone is if we do it in the early evening for me here in the UK. So we generally have a team meeting with the core team members once a week on a Monday night. We do our weekly planning. And then, of course, we also replicate that as well when we do monthly planning, quarterly planning, annual planning. So that's a little bit of a snapshot of what the day looks like.
I love it, and I can summarize it. So what you're telling me is that you're not successful by accident. It's this beautiful, beautiful thing. And I'll give Alex, and Alex, if you listen to this, I love you, brother, to pieces. I think we all do. You know this. The thing for me, consistency and routine, right? And I think underneath it, it's measure. And I think for a lot of my career, I don't want to call it luck. Like I knew what I was doing, right? Like I could launch a product, hit 7 figures, right? But I could never take it to the next level because I never had a measure. I didn't have a like, what are those, as Mike McCallum calls my queen bee roles that I'm supposed to be doing? Because I'm like, oh, I'll just do everything and eventually it'll stick. And what I've learned through the power of process and routine is that I have a very clear path of what's working or not working. And it eliminates the ambiguity of it. So like if I have my practice and my meditation and my critical tasks and the needle's not moving, I'm like, well, I'm either not doing them or I shouldn't be doing them. But it really is interesting the level of success that I've had just by putting a measure to things, like putting things into a process or having a non-negotiable. Like you said something that I think everybody should hear over and over and over and over again, that you can't let anybody else dictate how you spend your time. And, you know, I say this all the time. It's like I watch entrepreneurs think that they're in the driver's seat of their business, but they're really in the passenger seat because they're on Facebook and Instagram and an email. And all their core focus is getting pulled to fighting fires. So when it comes back to like, oh, I have a little bit of time, there's nothing left in the gas tank. And you said the term deep work, and I'm assuming you read it. For those of you listening, there's a really good book by Cal Newport called Deep Work. And I loved it. It was one of the pivotal reads for me to protecting my time, was like carving out this time that Keith Cunningham calls it thinking time in his book, The Road Less Stupid, but that carving out that time when I'm at my peak state of doing like the deep, deep work and keeping it protected and keeping it focused. And I love that. I love that routine. I love all of it. And I think it's awesome. And so when you think about focus, right, do you ever, as the CEO of the company, like go plug into the interwebs, or do you allow your team to do that and kind of like brief you? Because you're spending less time on Facebook, which I would recommend everybody do. I personally use Facebook as like a CRM. So I only have I have a calendar block in my day for 20 minutes. And I'm only allowed to go in for 20 minutes. And I don't even go do responses. I have custom lists made of people that I follow. Like you're on one, James is on one, Alex is on one. And then I go and I'm like, oh, click on friends of this mini list. And then I go engage with their stuff. And then prospects, I go engage, and then I'm off. And like I'm gone, right? And so do you ever plug in to like the social of the company, or do you get briefed by like Sarah or somebody on the team? Like how do you handle keeping your pulse on all your customers and audience? Because there's people like, I'm the CEO, I have to be on social, I have to see what's going on, I know everything's there. Like how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I do rely a lot on the team to come to me with feedback with any issues. I have an excellent customer support team, which is another thing that I would recommend is for people to have put a lot of time and not a lot of time, put a lot of focus and value in having great customer support, because not only do you keep your customers happy, but you also get a lot of good intelligence and research from them. So certainly I rely on a good team. Just recently I've set myself a target of trying to speak to as many customers as I possibly can. And the way that we do that is that we have our email system. And when anyone puts a certain amount of orders in with us, it automatically fires off an email to them from me saying, hey, I'd love to have a chat with you. And then I just jump onto a Zoom call with them and we have a bit of a chat. I ask them a few questions, and I think that's probably the way that I like to stay in touch.
Yeah. And for those of you listening that didn't catch that, like Tristan and I have worked together, so he knows like I'm all about the relationships. Like these are the most important things. Like you have it set up so that when they hit a threshold, it shoots off an email, because this is why I love automations, because you can automate everything not required a human by to create a human connection, right? And so you shoot them off an email like, hey, it's the CEO of Swanwick Sleep. I would love to jump on a call. I would love to connect. And you literally said it. You literally get the best intel. You keep your pulse on the conversation, and it's from one of your best customers. So it's going to be the most accurate, kind of non-biased feedback. And that's better than you're going to find anywhere on social media. I promise you.
Yeah.
I absolutely promise you.
100%. I mean, when you have that personal connection with someone, when it's just one-on-one, this is where I can use some of my skills as a former journalist. You spend a little bit of time talking, you ask questions, you can ask the same questions in different ways to really draw out things that people like about your company or your product, or feedback that might not even be that conscious to the person. It may be subconscious. So 100% trying to get that personal connection with people is so much more valuable than looking at social media or doing surveys.
Yeah, and when you think about that, when you think about getting those calls, like what's been some of like the best intel, like have you gotten anything that you wouldn't have gotten anywhere else? Like I tell people like the best place you can be is in a relationship with your customers, right? So like what's some of the stuff that you've gotten from this, or how has it benefited the company? Like I would just love to hear some tangibles.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like just today, I got onto a call and it was through the automated system, and it was with a dentist, orthodontist, and he told me that he loves Swannies and he wears them while he's working because anyone who's been to a dentist recently or an orthodontist will know that they use like these really bright blue lights to actually do their work. And he told me that it just how punishing it was for him to actually be looking at this blue light the whole time. And there were other glasses, safety glasses out there that helped, but nothing that was as comfortable or as effective as Swannies. So it just completely opened up this potential, entirely new potential market for me, something that I just never even considered before.
Yeah, I love it. Like seriously, like I've shared this example, not specifically because I can't because I'm under NDA, but there was one company in particular I set up the same thing. And I'll never forget because it got triggered. We called, and the person we talked to had just ordered like 30 of the product. And I was like, nobody needs that many of this product. Nobody. And then it turns out they own a company and they were buying it for their employees, but they only bought it for a small subset of their employees because they wanted to see how they liked them. So we got on a call, and then they ended up buying on the call. Dude, we were just calling to say thank you. They ended up buying for every other employee. So it was like another 100 sales. And we just made them, I'm like, hey, can we make you a coupon code with your name just to say thank you? Like, because you could have wholesale. I'm like, no, we want to support. And so I find that there's so many opportunities that you can't even imagine possible just by getting on these calls and really connecting with your customers.
Yeah, that's 100%. Completely agree with you. It's look, I get it. It's people are busy, and it can be really, it can be a lot of time spent doing this type of thing. And especially this day and age, people like to use messages and don't necessarily like to have that verbal communication anymore. But I've done something. I'm getting close to about 50 of these types of interviews done. And I would say that every single one of them has provided something very, very valuable. And they've been enjoyable. They've been an opportunity to learn. It's just, I can't speak highly enough about actually getting onto a call with your customers or other people, other entrepreneurs, people who are in that space, and just forming those relationships. So important and so valuable.
Yeah, and what I like to tell people is like, you have to do this. Like, this isn't a thing. These are the people that pay your bills. These are the people that have bought your product. These are the people that are going to recommend other people to your product. And I watch so many people try to spend all their time convincing people to buy their product for the first time instead of deepening the relationship with the people who already did, which is going to have a 10x return on what it is on the front. And Tristan, you guys nailed this, and I'm so happy we're talking about this. So I will say, though, one of the things that I've learned in this, like you were a former journalist, so I don't worry about you having a container, but I found most of the time I have to do one of two things. If it's the CEO, you got to have an outline, like a set of questions. You need a tight container. If it's a 20-minute call, make it a 20-minute call. Don't go over, like respect their time and respect yours, but have an idea of what you want to ask them. And you can change the question to match the conversation, but know kind of where you're going to guide it is number one. Or number two, if you're really emotionally invested in your product, have somebody who's not get on the call so they have an objective view. And so when feedback comes in, they can hear it without putting a filter on it. Because I will say this, and I'm sure, Tristan, you could hammer this home. One of the mistakes that I see when people get on phone calls with customers, they summarize the customer's answers. and you don't want to summarize them. You want to copy them verbatim, because if they are telling you like what their life was before the product, you want that actual exact verbatim language, because that's what your other customers are going to respond to. And so make sure that you kind of have that container. So when you get onto these calls, do you ask like a certain set of questions, or is there one that you're looking to achieve more? Like, how do you go about navigating the relationship on these calls?
Yeah, look, I certainly have a list of questions. And as you say, you can change them depending on what's coming out. Each one tends to be a little bit different, and it really depends on where there's answers are interesting. But yeah, just have a list of questions, and something that you mentioned is like you want to actually have answers verbatim. So a trick that I do is like I do Zoom calls. I record them to the cloud, and then I upload them to this automatic transcription service called otter.ai.
Yep.
And then you just go and copy and paste some of that language, and then you can actually use that for your copywriting, for your ads, your marketing, that type of thing. You can really actually start to use that actual customer language in your marketing. It can be very powerful.
Yeah, no, I use Otter, I've used Rev, I use Temi, which is 10 cents a minute, like temi.com, which is owned by Rev. And so
Yeah.
I think, just so everybody listening to this, like, I get questions all the time, like, what should I post on social? What should my ad copy say? And I was like, do exactly what Tristan just said, because it is the best copy. It is the best headline. It is the best social captions, because it's the actual thing that your customers are already saying. And so it'll attract the new ones that resonate the same, because you can write a post. It's like, hey, have you ever struggled with, and then you had a call with a customer like, hey, what was life like in the office in the orthodontist before? Oh my God, the lights were so bright, I was getting headaches. And so it's like, hey, have you ever struggled with the lights in your office being bright? That nasty fluorescence that they are getting those day headaches and not understanding why. And all of a sudden you have like this magic formula for conversions and copy and getting people in. So I think it's really, really, really important. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, man. That's
no
awesome.
worries.
Yes.
The other thing I'll say is that customers love it. They love to talk to you as well.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, you'll form relationships with people. I have people that buy my marketing stuff now, that learned from me, that launched a business so they could consume my content because they were fans from 2010 when I was a food blogger. And I've been doing this. I've like get on calls, like I pick it up. And one of the things you said earlier I think is important is like, we live in this world, but everybody wants messenger. They want text. They want it. Maybe, but I've realized that people are just settling for it, because every time I get on a video call or pick up the phone, it's almost like a surprise and delight pattern interrupt, because nobody does it anymore. Yeah. And it even enhances the value of what you're doing, because nobody calls anymore. Like I think about the times my phone rings, I just flip it over. I don't even pick it up anymore. Right? I'm like, oh, stop bothering me. Stop bothering me. Right.
Yeah.
But when they do pick up, they're like, oh my God, you called me. Oh my God, we got on video. Oh, there's a real human here. And I found that the intrinsic value of connecting with a customer is amplified even more because of the current state of how people communicate.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Because people forget that. Well, no, not forget. A lot of the people just don't even think that when they buy from a company on the internet, an e-commerce company, it can be pretty impersonal. So when you get onto a call and you start talking to them, they start to realize that there's real people behind this. People just like you and I, and who have families and go through all the same challenges that they do, and it just helps to really make a connection that you just can't make on Facebook or on a survey or something like that.
Yeah, it introduces the real human element. Like, it really humanizes the brand. And the thing is like, we'll say this forever, people don't buy the best product, they buy the best relationship, right? And brand loyalty and customer loyalty doesn't necessarily always come from having the best product. Right? Like, there's products where like, oh, there's probably a better one, but we love the brand, the relationship with the brand. I get that their families are there. They're helping the world. They're giving to a nonprofit. And so I'd say everybody listening to this, like, really, really listen to this and take heed of this. Again, this is one of the, I'm going to air quote this if you're listening, one of the secrets to building a successful company is having these deep relationships with these customers and the people that are really moving the needle. And they move the needle financially, but they also move the needle in your marketing. 93% of marketing is word of mouth. And when you give these people these conversations, what you don't think about is when they get off a call with Tristan, they're going to be like, you'll never believe it. I bought these glasses and this person called me. I bought these glasses and they picked up the phone. Like, they called me and asked me how things were going. And it's a really powerful, powerful strategy and tactic. But really at the core of it, it's just a relationship. And so, and I would say, do you empower your team to do this at well, as like at the lowest level, your customer service team, your social team? Like, how do you navigate that with them?
Yeah, 100%. I'd say that my customer service team, they talk to way more people than I ever will be able to get around to, and consistently since the start of the business to now, the customer testimonials that we get, they always mention customer service, and they always mention, oh my gosh, it was so nice to have Melanie actually get onto the phone with me and walk me through that, because I haven't actually bought online before. I wasn't sure how to enter my credit card details, and she got onto a call and she talked me through it. Like, just those little things, it makes such a big difference.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. I love it. I actually think that that's like a perfect place to kind of leave this, because I don't want to distract any more from that. That is such a power, like, for everybody listening, like the companies that I've taken in 10x or 20x always comes from depth on the back end. And what was just shared is one of the most profound and easiest ways to do it. So I have a couple rapid fire questions for you, Tristan, because I always like to know, what are you currently reading?
What am I currently reading? I am reading, what's it called? It's called not Homo Deus by Noah. The one,
I'm going to have to Google it. I'll Google it. Let me see.
It's by Homo Deus by Noah. It's like this Israeli writer.
Oh, yeah. Noah Harari.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he did Sapiens. That's right. He did Sapiens, which is a really famous book.
Okay. And then what's the best book you've read of 2020?
Best book I've read of 2020. Let me see here. I would probably say his first book, which is Sapiens.
Sapiens.
That's why I'm now reading his second. Yeah, his second book. Yeah.
And what was Sapiens about? I haven't read that one.
Oh, look, it's about I suppose the history of mankind and how it's evolved over the years, and it touches a lot on, like the Paleolithic era and how important relationships and communities have been to the development of humankind.
Imagine, way to bring it full circle with this one. Then favorite food, like if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Ice cream.
What flavor?
Butterscotch.
Mine's black raspberry, which is a hard flavor to find, but it's one of my favorites.
Right.
So I absolutely love it, man. I love it. So for everybody listening, for everybody watching, go get yourself in the world. Go to swanwicksleep.com. Obviously, I vouch for it. I'm not paid for this in any way, shape, or form. What I shared is actually true, and there's scientific evidence now, so I'm not one of those tinfoil hat guys anymore. People are like, yeah, it's real. It's awesome. Make sure you check it out. And they don't have glasses. They have everything to help you sleep. And I'm going to tell you right now, we talked a lot about the business and connection and relationships with your customers, but also we need to remember that you're the one driving that ship, and you need to be as healthy as possible, because you can only be an effective entrepreneur if you're taking care of yourself. So I highly, highly, highly recommend, maximizing your sleep, since you spend a third of your life doing it, and it's a good place to start, and it influences everything. So what I like to do, Tristan, at the end is I always just like to give you the floor for any closing words. If you could tattoo anything on somebody's soul, on their brain that they remember, and it's the only thing they remember from this episode, or you want them to take away, what would that thing be?
I would say it's the relationships, just how important relationships are in life and in the world. And I think maintaining good relationships, creating new relationships, it's the key to life and the key to success.
I love it, and I'm not going to taint that anymore. I've been saying it forever, and I love when I get validation about it. So you have to remember that relationships always beat algorithms. So guys, this has been an amazing episode. I'm going to cue the outro in a minute. Make sure you go check out swanwicksleep.com. Google it, pop it up, hit them on the interwebs, the social. There's even a good chance you'll end up on a call with Tristan. So just go buy a lot, and then you'll hit the threshold, and you're in. It's been fun. I will see you guys in the next episode, or you will hear me in your earball. So remember that relationships always beat algorithms, and now it's time to cue the outro.